Initially, I was going to make a video giving my review on Stranger Things final season, but I had some complications, so I never got around to it. Luckily, though, Moist Critical gave his review the other day, and it pretty much summarizes most of my thoughts on what I thought of the first wave. So I'm just gonna go through this like a fine tooth comb and, add on to my thoughts on the season.
There were so many things in here that I thought were just kind of underwhelming and even went against some of the really good things Stranger Things had done in previous seasons.
Yeah. So I think the biggest problem, like, in my opinion, would be kind of the character relationships as well as the upside down. Because the upside down in season 5 is really boring now. The only threat is the military, and they're the most intelligent, incompetent bad guys I've ever seen. I'll talk more about that when Charlie talks about it. But the main problem I have with the Upside Down is you don't see any of the monsters that have been previously established outside of the Demogorgon. You don't get any of like the Demo Dogs, the Demo Bats, or even the those vines, all of which are connected to Vecna, which is the big bad. They are just completely absent. Now, I guess the implication is the military kind of cleansed the Upside Down to a certain degree, but that doesn't add up because they still struggle with fighting the Demogorgons. I don't think they were able to just get rid of everything that made the Upside Down so dangerous and turn it into a husk of its former self. And when the characters who have been in the Upside Down re enter, they just don't seem to care. They aren't terrified, whereas previously it really was like not even that long ago. In the last season, it was complicated to like navigate the Upside Down. And you could make the argument that, they've been traveling so much now in between seasons, like so much time has passed that they have just become familiar with the Upside Down. But that still doesn't work because Steve, Dustin, Jonathan, Nancy, they are all returning for the first time in a while, and none of them seem to care. They aren't scared. It's implied that only Hop crawls into the Upside Down now. So, that was one of my biggest complaints. And I think he's about to talk about the character personalities, which is another one of my
I'm going
complaints.
to be getting into spoilers, so this is your full warning here. I'm not going to spoil everything with the first 4 episodes, but there are some things I want to talk about that I just think showcase that they were really trying to just get through it. There are just a lot of moments in here where
Oh,
it
yeah,
feels
that's
rushed.
another thing. The pacing is just I don't even know how to describe it. I'm really getting like Game of Thrones season 8 in terms of pacing, which for those of you who don't know has been my biggest worry that if Stranger Things final season isn't satisfying, we could very much have another Game of Thrones ending on our hands.
But right now, they're just literally flat, one dimensional antagonist, military bad. And they put that fist up your ass, letting you know you should not be rooting for the military at all. So,
Yeah. And he goes more into depth as well on that. Like they Dr. K and subsequently the other military parts of the military, they are implied to know enough about the Upside Down. Like they know its weakness. A lot of the monsters' weaknesses are fire, yet they are still using guns for some reason because it hasn't been established enough that guns do not work on these monsters. There's, I think, in the final, well, mid-season finale, there's this big battle between the monsters of the Upside Down, well, the Demogorgons mostly, and the military. And for some reason, the entire military is just using guns. Like they are even using a tank, and it doesn't work. which has been established already, only one guy is using a flamethrower, and unsurprisingly, it works. Like, they have Eleven's kryptonite. They made a weapon that was able to combat Eleven's telepathy. So it's clear that they know what they are doing, unless the plot tells them otherwise. It sucks.
And I also don't like that a lot of the character interactions just feel really weird and out of place. And the
Yeah.
biggest culprit of that is Dustin and Steve. Now,
Yeah.
their banter has been established since the beginning, basically. Like, they have camaraderie where they joke back and forth and they do argue. But in this season, that's dialed up to fucking 5,000.
Yeah.
There is not a single scene with these two together where they are
Like,
not at each other's.
I actually like let out an audible like ah when Dustin just started modifying Steve's car. Like, you don't do that to another man. And I know that's not the biggest deal of the world in the context of the show, but still, it's moments like that that just kind of show that they just don't care about each other, whereas previous seasons show that they are friends. Like, I'm not getting that vibe this season.
Throats. And to me, that just doesn't compute because these are like basically best friends, and Dustin is a shell of his former self. After the death of Eddie, he's traumatized from it, and Hellfire being dragged through the mud, it really hurts him.
Yeah.
So
I tried to give them, this is another thing that I think is like left up to interpretation. But once again, it's also a victim of its pace, the show's pacing, because they didn't do enough to really establish this. I think he's right on the money with how Eddie's death like really impacted Dustin, and I think that's what the writers were trying to go for in terms of why Dustin is just, hell bent on, keeping his legacy alive and, not caring as much with and his friends' needs. But that's still such a reach, and we barely see any semblance of that as well. Like, I get it. Eddie saved his life, so he should absolutely want to make sure, like, try to keep his legacy alive. But it's coming at the cost of, like, his relationship with his friends. It feels like what they did with Max and Billy in season 4, but it's out of place for Dustin because that is just not part of his character at all. Like, he has been shown to be the one to care about his friends above all else. Like, season 1, he just straight up says that is the reason as to why Lucas and Mike need to make up when they were bickering. And yet now he's the one that is just throwing it all out the goddamn window. The season's not bad, but yeah, it's not enjoyable to watch him bicker with his longtime friends.
about it. And then Dustin is combative back. So then they're just perpetually arguing back and forth to the point where they have to implement a rule where they don't talk to each other anymore. Like, it feels like characters are regressing. And it's just annoying. Especially Jonathan, by the way. His whole role in this series now is basically just being like a stick in the mud.
Yeah.
Like, he is just always against the good ideas, and when
I also really hated that.
an idea pans out, he's mad about it panning out. So, like Steve, for example, he makes a pretty brave decision to drive his car with all of them in it to the Upside Down as the portal is
Which
closing.
was a really good
a decision
scene,
that
by
Nancy
the way.
also supports.
Like, I know I've been like just agreeing with like some of the complaints because they are valid complaints, but one of the positive things I do like is kind of the action and cinematography. Like that scene with them driving the car into the Upside Down, I think was really cool. However, you know, like the military versus it falls back on what I was saying with the military and the Demogorgon, how sometimes it feels out of place, like in terms of power level and strength. Like, I don't know if he's mentioned it yet, but the Demogorgon is just one of the like its strength is all over the place. So it's able to tank a bunch of bullets, yet it struggled against Mike's mom, Karen, who attacks it with a broken wine bottle. The Demogorgon is able to survive falling through like barbed wire, a trap set by the kids, getting shot by bullets and a tank by the military. Yet Karen, powered by the love of a wine mom and her name, is able to deal enough damage to the Demogorgon like she's Laura Croft, and so much so that it becomes a plot point where Eleven and Hopper are able to track its bloodstains through the Upside Down. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, it's a really cool shot, but it only happens because the plot demands for it. I tried to give a compliment and I wound it up just going back into another complaint. But I still think a lot of the action and cinematography is really cool. Like, I will give that an upside. I just it felt that I just wish it wasn't so out of place at times.
And Jonathan's like, no, don't do it, don't you fucking do it, don't you fucking do it. And then when they get through there, Jonathan immediately is mad at him, like, well, maybe if you didn't drive it in the fucking Upside Down. And it's like, Jonathan, what are you talking about? And that's basically him for the entire volume 1 here of the final season. He's just always against the good idea. It's just lame. His whole character's been reduced to just, like, being obsessed with trying to, like, propose to Nancy now to beat Steve in this competition without ever really improving his relationship with Nancy, and never actually contributing anything of value to the overall plot anymore.
I never thought I would agree with a bunch of people on like a r/Stranger Things, but yeah, I really do think the Nancy and Steve ship has more weight than Nancy and Jonathan at this point. Like, Jonathan has more chemistry with Argyle than he did with Nancy, who, by the way, is not in this final season. Argyle, not Nancy. He survives season 4, and it's just not even mentioned in season 5. Like, I get he wasn't, like, all that integral, but, you know, neither was Murphy at first, and yet, you know, they found a way to have him, like, help in the final battle, like, come throughout the season. Like, he just reoccurs throughout every season, help to a degree, and still provide comedy, which is what Argyle did. And it wouldn't feel out of place for him to just up and abandon his life in California to just help his bro Jonathan and Hawkins. Like, it really doesn't. Yet he's just not here. You know, he lived just to never be relevant again.
The mother is trying to protect Holly, and the Demogorgon is chasing them. And it one taps the husband, whose name I already forgot because he plays such a little role.
I think his name is Ted. Yeah. And he doesn't die, by the way. For some, outside of the military, nobody is dying despite the stakes are dialed up to 11 in this season. It's so janky. And speaking of Holly, that's another character that he just, well, another critique overall is the inconsistency with time. Like, yeah, it's been almost 10 years since the first season release. Millie Bobby Brown has a child now, and yet they are still playing these same characters, which are kids. And Holly, when the season starts, she's like barely 3 years old, I think. And now she's almost to the age Mike was when the season starts. Despite the fact only 4 years has passed since the show has started. And they actually, like, acknowledge that it's an inconsistency with you have her mom literally asking the dad, do you even know what age your daughter is? And they don't give an answer. Like, that doesn't feel satisfying for how Holly, who's now an integral character to a certain extent in this final season, is just all of a sudden, like, in middle school. Well, I guess technically she's in elementary school, but she talks and acts the way Mike and the rest of the kids do at the start of season 1. It feels so out of place. And they are the most unbelievable children I've ever seen. Like Carb, for example. That's not his real name. His real name is Derek, but I just do not give two shits about him. He is talking like an gamer on Xbox Live. it is it's so stupid.
Inconsistency with the Demogorgon when it comes to the main cast versus
Yeah.
literally everybody else. Which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but it is something that kind of grinded my ass to a grease a little
And again,
bit
it wouldn't be
at
half
the
as
end of
bad if it wasn't
episode
just the
4.
Demogorgon that's like the
Like, I've hit you
monster
with a lot of
fighting
things I didn't
everybody.
like about it, but there are things I do like. I think Will's character is
Yep.
probably the best in the season. Like,
Yeah.
this is a character...
This is a character whose arc kind of came out of nowhere to an extent. Like, they were built, like, they were adding slight hints, but ever since season 2, he hasn't really had a whole lot of time to shine. Which makes sense given the initial vision for Stranger Things. You can actually find the show Bible for Stranger Things. It's called Montauk, I think. Yeah, I use it all the time for reference, but yeah. This is the initial plan they had for Stranger Things. They were supposed to completely recast the characters after season 1. Like, if there was a continuation, they wanted them to all be adults. Let me find it right here. Yep. They would return to Montauk, Hawkins as adults, and they would recast the characters. Well, they would be the same characters, but now adults. And if they wanted to give Will a character arc, you know, having a different actor who has a different variety of talent, that would have made sense in that case. But the problem with Will particularly is that he was a character created for the sole purpose of motivating other characters. He gets kidnapped in season 1, which lays out the foundation for everything else that's to come. He survives, but now he's just added to the main cast, and they don't really know how to give his character more depth. It becomes really obvious after season 2. Yet season 5, they did it. They actually are giving him a good character arc and showing his skills as an actor. Like, there was this meme going around for a while about how as soon as Stranger Things ends, half the cast is going to be out of a job. And everyone was just immediately saying Noah Schnapp is going to have, like, the podcast in a few years talking about his time on Stranger Things. Like, they just did not have faith in him as an actor. Yet, he is by far one of the best things in the final season. Like, I am genuinely impressed with his talent.
It doesn't fully come out of nowhere. They do kind of place the breadcrumbs, but when it happens, you're like, oh, wow, he can do that? That's going to be really important.
I think the reason for that is because they wanted Vecna to be the final boss. Like, he is being established as the final boss. I would be shocked if he wasn't. But one of the biggest theories I have, and Charlie's going to talk about the ending as well, is that it is going to come down to a 3v1. Will, 11, and spoilers, Callie, number 8, are going to team up to defeat Vecna. Which is, I think, the most predictable ending imaginable.
I also think Vecna is an interesting villain. Even though they keep introducing new things instead of, like, answering previous questions, which is kind of annoying, which is another one of my
They keep adding stuff without
here.
really,
like, I don't like how it's still mainly still
questions.
just presenting.
And I know that's a cliche in horrors where if you don't have anywhere else to go in the series, they just fall back on giving depth to, like, the big bad, which often at times ruins the horror mystery. But in the case of Stranger Things and Vecna, that mystery is integral to the plot. Yet they are not answering it for some reason. They're just adding a lot of new things. I agree with Charlie 100% on that. I wish they would actually do a better job at answering some of the unanswered questions.
Vecna is still very interesting, and the mystery of like his grand scheme is enough to keep you invested and hooked on it, especially now they introduce like all those memories, and there's one that he's very terrified of where Max has been hiding in this
Yeah.
cave, and when she gets into that cave, you just see him just standing there in his normal human Henry form just crying. You know, I gotta fucking order a French fries there.
So initially, I was kind of holding out for Vecna to not be the final boss because, well, he's going to give his prediction on the ending, which is a prediction I have, and I think they are going to go with. But I do think Vecna is the final boss. I don't think there's a greater big bad because even with that little hints of, something that even he's terrified of, it's a memory. It's not connected to the upside down. So I don't know how that would work. It's not really a complaint or compliment. It's just an observation, I would say. There is a chance he's not the final boss, but I don't think they've given enough to really solidify that.
But now I want to mention something else that I think is probably a hot take with something I liked from this
He's going to
volume
talk
one.
about he's going to talk about 8.
Force
No!
of nature. At Origins, what goes into our products
What
matters
is with
just as
these
much as
ads?
we
I really like that they brought Eleven's sister back.
Yeah.
That's probably a really spicy take because that episode is still the worst in the series by far. That was in
I
like
didn't hate that episode as much as everybody else. I do think it is a bit out of place. I hated all the other extra characters, but Callie, I think, had a lot of, well, now that she's been returned, I definitely think serves a significant purpose to the ending, how I think the show is going to end, and I'm all for that. Like, I hope she's not just another telepath. I keep watching that word. I hope she's just not another like psychic kid like Will, 11, and Vecna. I hope they kind of keep her as like kind of a weaker version, like with just the illusions, because then it it would at least add depth. Like they wouldn't all just be doing the same thing. Maybe she could like, even though she can't like force pull things like the rest, she has a stronger ability to deceive people through her mind ability. It even surpasses that of Vecna's. And she could trick Vecna in order to lure him into a trap where he fights against 11 and Will. That way it's just not like one big psychic battle. That's not how I think it's going to end. I do think it will end with the big psychic battle. But it's just a thought to make things a little bit more interesting.
season 2 where they had this like random completely out of left field episode where 11 meets her sister who has powers like her, and they basically have like a fucking biker gang and they go out causing a ruckus.
Yeah, that was so
and
stupid.
That was an episode everyone hated, and it seemed as though they tried to pretend it never existed because it never came back again. 11's sister was never even loosely referenced again, really. But in the final episode here of Volume 1, we see that the thing that was like clogging her ability to use her powers and hurting her and like weakening her was actually the military using her sister as that sonic weapon.
Yeah.
I actually really like that idea because you can't just say that episode in season 2 is not canon. It has to still exist as a part of the overall lore here.
Exactly. And depending on how you liked that episode, and I guess like Kelly's character as a whole, that was a really good plot twist. Unfortunately, I saw that happening. Like, I'm not trying to be like, I saw that coming from a mile away. No, it's just because I really think the show is going to end with, a 3v1 essentially. And the reason for that is because of the significance D&D plays in this show. Again, they reference it when they're like strategizing. The monsters are named after D&D character. D&D plays such a critical role in the show that I'm highly confident that it's going to end in a 3v1 because the golden number in D&D is 20. You have 11, 8, and 1 working together to defeat the final boss. Like, do the math. It feels super obvious. The only thing... So, I expected Callie to return. Like, she was the thing in the machine. 11 thought it was Vecna. The military was holding Vecna captive. If I didn't like that episode and I wasn't holding out for her to return, I probably would have thought the same. But I had a hunch the military had Callie, which is why she never returned. Or I guess that's the explanation for why she hasn't returned until now. But yeah, I think Will, Callie, and 11 are going to team up to defeat Vecna because together they are a nat 20 to defeat the final boss. I know that might not make sense to a lot of people because Vecna is one, but he hammers this line down Will's throat so much that I think it became super obvious. He tells Will he was the first. Like, he hammers that down that he was the first and he is the weakest. So, instead of one, you have the first. Add that with 11 and 8. Together, they will defeat Vecna. I'm pretty confident that's how it's going to end. Unless, aforementioned, there is a greater big bad, and Vecna will need to join forces with Callie and 11. And depending on how that's executed, I think could either make or break the series. If they stick with Vecna, they actually have a little bit of strategy and creativity towards the final fight between the 3 telepaths versus Vecna, the original. I think it'll be interesting to see how it ends.
It does make me a little concerned that the final fight between Vecna and the main crew is going to be like a fucking Conjuring movie finale where it's basically just
Could it? Okay, I didn't know he said that. Yeah, that is pretty much exactly what I am fearful of, which is why I'm hoping that, at least Callie is not like the rest. She is still just very weak by comparison, but still has a strong enough ability that could be integral. Like, I get it. 11 and Vecna have been established as, the 2 strongest of all of the children from Hawkins' lab. But the lab also established that each children had, like, their own abilities to an extent. And it wasn't just, like, each a unique ability, but they had their strengths and weaknesses, whereas 11 and Vecna were just good all around. I guess I'm holding out that Callie is still like that. Like, she only masters the ability to create illusions, but she just does it better than the other 2, which makes her integral in the final battle. And even though Will has insight, he can see from other people's... He's able to see from the eyes of Vecna and the monsters. He can, like, levitate stuff and now kill monsters with his mind. But I am hoping that is very much not as important as him being able to see from the eyes of the enemy. I think if they play with their strengths and weaknesses, all 3 of them together can make up the 20 that is needed to defeat the final boss. That, in my eyes, would be the best way of ending this series. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see if that comes to fruition.